Hey YouTube, today I'm going to teach you how to play Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers. It took a long time to make, so I had to break it up into two parts. This is part one, and it's going to include the intro and the verse. Alright guys, so for the intro we're going to be using two chords. One is going to be a variation of a D chord, and two, it's going to be an F sharp major chord. So when I say variation of the D, it's going to require a lot of stretching. You're going to need your pinky on the 5th fret of the A, ring finger on the 4th fret of the D, index finger on the 2nd fret of the G, and middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B. The way we're going to start, and again, follow along with the tabs. They'll be somewhere around here. I suck at editing still. But follow along with the tabs. If you have to pause the video, do it, and then just practice that way, and then play along once you do that. So starting with that, we're going to do the A and B string at the same time, and we're going to pluck the D, G, D, B, G. Just like that. From there, we're going to walk back down to that F sharp major chord. Using your ring finger on the 4th fret of the A, index finger on the 2nd fret of the A, you're going to just pluck it in that order. So 4th fret, 2nd fret, then use your pinky on the 5th fret of the E string, and then ring finger on the 4th fret of the E, and end on the 2nd fret of the E string. And that's going to be your bass note for your F chord, your F sharp chord. So starting with that 2nd fret of the E string, you're going to do that F sharp chord, and you're going to pluck the A, D, A, G, D in that order. So like this. Just like that. Then we're going to walk back up to that D chord, and to do that, use your pinky on the 4th fret of the D string, pluck then the 2nd fret of the D string, 5th fret of the A string with your pinky, and then 2nd fret of the A string. Now here comes the hard part. What you're going to need to do is use your pinky to slide up from the 4th fret to the 5th fret of the A string, and then get all your fingers situated into that D chord. Might take some time to get used to, but it's doable. I promise. It took me forever. So slide up, and then pluck the strings in this order with that D chord. Once you slide up, pluck A, then you got D, A, G, D, B. Now when you pluck that B string, you're going to do a hammer-on and pull-off on the 5th fret. Just like that. And then after you get that done, and I'm using my pinky. So I take my pinky off that 5th fret, and then I use it to hammer on the 5th fret of the B string. And then I'm going to pluck the D, or the G and the D strings again on the 2nd and 4th frets respectively. And after I do that, I'm just going to use those three strings, the D, G, and B strings, the way I have them, and I'm going to slide all my fingers up a full step, which means 2 frets each. So 4 becomes like this. So 4 becomes 6, 2 becomes 4, and 3 becomes 5. So I'm going to strum and slide up, and then I'm going to strum down one more time. After you get that, you go back into that F sharp major chord, and then do that same picking pattern that you did before the first time. And then you're going to go back up to the D chord. That second time you get to that D chord, you don't need to do the hammer-ons again. You just pluck A, D, A, G, D, B, G. And again, tabs. So once you get that portion down, then you can go back to the F chord, back up to the D, do that hammer on, and this time when you slide up, what I like to do is I like to bar the 2nd fret with my index finger of the D, G, B, and E strings, but I keep my my ring finger on the 4th fret of the D string and my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, and I just slide up again. But you have one extra note in there, which is that high E string, just to give it a fuller sound. And then from there, you go back to the F sharp major chord, and then you do the same picking pattern. Now, once you get to the end of that, instead of walking back up to the D chord, you're just going to pluck the G, B, and A strings again. And that's what you do before you start the verse. So pause the video, practice that over and over and over and over and over until you get it, and then you can start with the verse. Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city I live in, the city of angels. Lonely as I am, together we cry. Alright, so for the first chord we're going to use, it's going to be an E major chord. You just strum down simply like that. So it's going to be index finger on the 7th fret of the A string and ring finger barring the 9th fret of the D, G, and B strings. And then switch chords, and you're going to use a variation of a B major chord. You can use the full bar chord if you want, but I prefer to do it this way because that's how I learned it from watching a bunch of videos. So I use my my ring finger and my pinky finger on the 9th fret of the A and D strings, middle finger on the 8th fret of the G string, and index finger on the 7th fret of the B string. So just like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide up from the 9th fret of the A and D strings, and I'm going to slide up a full step to the 11th fret for that C sharp minor chord. So I'm going to slide up, and then I'm going to bar the 9th fret of the D, the 9th fret of the G and the B strings. Eventually I'll learn what all these are called. So like this. Just like that. And then using that same shape that you did with the C sharp minor chord, you go down to the 6th fret, and I'm talking about your ring finger and pinky finger on the 6th fret of the A and D strings, and your index finger barring the 4th fret of the G and B strings. Strum that down once, and then quickly go up to an A chord, which has the ring finger and pinky finger on the 7th fret of the A and D, middle finger on the 6th fret of the G, and index finger on the 5th fret of the B. And then repeat. But the second time around, instead of going to that C or that G sharp major, G sharp minor chord, from that C sharp minor you're just going to stop at the A. So you don't have to do that. You just strum the A chord, and that's it. And so you do that twice. And after the second time around where you strum that A chord, you're going to strum an E major 7th chord. Just learn what that was called, by the way. So an E major 7th is your index finger on the 7th fret of the A string, ring finger on the 9th fret of the D string, middle finger on the 8th fret of the G string, and pinky on the 9th fret of the B string. So just strum that down once and let it ring out. And then it gets into the next part of the verse. So practice that because you're going to use those chord shapes in the second part of the verse, but you're going to be doing a lot more hammer-ons and pull-offs and slides, and it can be difficult. Second part's going to sound like this. Alright guys, so if that looks too difficult for you right now, go ahead and move on to the next part of the song. For those of you sticking around, here's how to play that. So again, with a bunch of muted strums in this hammer-on pull-offs, but you're going to use the same chord shapes. So we're still going to start with that E, and instead of just down strums, you do a down strum, and then strum back up, mute the strings. And as you mute the strings, I said that kind of funny. As you mute the strings, you're going to switch to that B chord. So, and then strum down. Now, from that B chord, after you strum down, you're going to pick the 8th fret of the G string, 9th fret of the D string, and then you're going to take your pinky off. That way you can use it to hammer on the 9th fret of the G string from the 8th fret. It's a hammer-on pull-off. So after you hammer on, put your pinky back on the 9th fret of the D string, and then pluck that and pluck the 8th fret of the G string. And then you're going to strum down and slide up to that C sharp minor chord, just like you did in the first part of the verse. And then you're going to do an up strum and then a down strum. Then mute the strings and switch to that G sharp minor chord, strum down, and then again quickly strum that A chord. And after you strum the A chord, you're going to, I pull all my fingers off and I use my ring finger to hammer onto the 7th fret of the B string, and then pull off, and then use my middle finger to pluck the 6th fret of the G string again. So just like that. From there, you'll notice I played a kind of a slide back into the verse. And what I'm doing there, after that hammer-on pull-off, I use my ring finger on the 7th fret of the A string, and I slide it up to the 11th fret of the A string. And I also bar with my index finger the 9th fret of the D, the D and the G strings, and pluck them at the same time. And then I pluck the 11th fret of the A string again, and when I pluck that, I'm going to slide down, and then I'm going to get that B chord shape again. Strum down, and then you're going to do that hammer-on pull-off of the B chord like you did before. So again, G, D, hammer on G, D, G. And then you're going to slide up to that C sharp minor chord, do that up, down strum, up, and then mute. And then instead of going to that G sharp minor, you're just going to end on the A. Now when I strum down once, I'm going to strum 2 more times after that, but I'm going to focus more on the higher strings. So you see how it sounds higher than this one? And all I'm doing is barring the 5th fret of the high E and B strings when I do that, before I start into the second part. Now for this part, it's going to be the same chords, but you're going to use a couple of different hammer-on pull-offs. And we'll get to that part right here. So it's the same as before. But when you get to that A chord, instead of hammering on and pulling off the 7th fret of the B string, you're going to hammer on and pull off the 7th fret of the high E string, and then pluck the 5th fret of the B string. So, and then use that same slide as we did before to get back into that B chord. Now when you get to that B chord, instead of doing that hammer on, what you're going to do is you're going to pluck the B string, 7th fret of the B string, 8th fret of the G string, and then you're going to hammer on the 9th fret from the 7th fret of the high E string, and then pluck the 7th fret of the B string again. So like this. Then go to the A chord after you slide up to that C sharp minor from the B. And then you're going to play that E major 7th. So all together, try to play it slow for you. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you did, go ahead and move on to part 2 where you're going to learn the chorus and the bridge of the song. And whatever the mini solo is. So go ahead, click on that.